And once you figure out how the key to understanding all of this, all of a sudden the whole world opens up to you and you say, oh, now I see why there were 8 twin towers in New York. New York, the Empire State. You need to do some homework on the term twin tower and find out that it goes back to Jacob and Boaz of the Phoenician Canaanites.
End of days.
The freedom of speech is being taken away.
What do you think happens somewhere after they die? Do you believe in heaven?
I never did.
Been in power for thousands of years. This has been going on from day one.
Was it 1997, Michael? Anil?
And welcome to a brand new life, to a brand new day, all the way from the wastelands of California. My name is Michael, and I am a mere figment of your imagination. I look forward to once again serve you those sounds of salvation. First-time listeners, turn on, tune in, and drop out. This is a different kind of show, a place where you don't feel so alone. Let us chase away the light no matter what you at home choose to believe, and do admire you for your curiosity. Live and direct right now on the TuneIn radio app. Search End of Days and you'll find the 24/7 network. My guest this evening is Robert Stanley, formerly a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development. Robert is currently employed as a corporate editor for an international social compliance service. Robert has traveled to more than 50 countries during his lifelong pursuit of modern and ancient mysteries. Over the past 30 years, his quest for unique ideas and information has led him to research and write about many controversial topics. Once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me into your hearts and into your minds. Here we are again on a night like this. Welcome back to the program. Tonight will be fun. Always an honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you to those listening here in America and those who listen outside of America. Oh yes, no matter where you are on this island Earth, I really do appreciate you being here with me tonight. So much to go over, however. Mr. Stanley, I believe, is waiting. Let's bring him in. Hello, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for being here, by the way. I know you are in a different part of this island Earth, so I'm so happy you can be here.
Thank you.
And on
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and on short notice too. So, I really do appreciate that so much.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, my friend. How are you, Robert? Are you okay? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm just busy. I mean, it's good to be busy, but lately, I don't know. A lot of people contacting me.
That's a good thing.
I suppose. Yeah. I said I'm here to help people.
That's right.
Sometimes you get what you ask for, and oh my God, I guess a lot of people need help.
Oh, trust me, lots of people do. Lots of people we can't even help, however.
That's true.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's very frustrating.
I do want to backtrack just a little bit here before we continue. I did want to go over your background just very briefly for those who are new to the program and never heard of you, Robert.
Oh, they have never heard of me?
It was very,
Yeah. Hey, guess what? Those people are few and far between right now.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons I'm getting so much email and requests and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I didn't, hey, look, I wasn't planning on this, Michael. I just wanted to share what I'd learned or what I think is happening, and that it's kind of snowballed. It started last year. YouTube, actually. Once I started getting on YouTube, that's when things really went completely nuts for me. And it's actually increasing. So anyway, what did you want to know? What do you want me to tell people?
Well, when did your journey actually begin in these controversial topics?
Yeah, I've always been interested in this somewhat, but it really accelerated greatly. I would say the catalyst for the reason that I do this kind of work is because of what happened to me on September 21st, 1985, when I was working as a security guard in Malibu on the beach for the rich and famous, and it was a private beach. And there was an event that took place there that, well, it brought me face to face with the paranormal in a way that it didn't give me any wiggle room to go into denial about what was happening. In fact, all it did was raise a lot more questions than answers. In fact, I really didn't have any answers. All I knew was that whatever had happened, was real, or surreal, I guess would be a better way to put it. And so that's what set me on the path of really trying to understand what the paranormal is and how it affects people's lives.
Oh, yes. And one of the things I do want to backtrack here on this interview is you sort of caught a lot of heat on that last interview in regards to Zecharia Sitchin's work.
Oh, yeah.
Some folks were really upset on your take on the secret space program. And also the big one is En.ki. Well, lots of people were very, very triggered by that.
I understand, and that's not my intention, but I completely understand their feelings about that because they see him as some sort of savior, father figure, and that's exactly what he wants. Yeah, I'm just pointing out the obvious, but it seems obvious to me now. However, it took me almost 30 years of research and experience to come to that awareness. So, and I have nothing against that individual. I'm just like trying to set the record straight, and yeah, okay. So for as many people as were upset, there was actually more people that were pleased.
I agree.
And so it's okay. Anyways.
Yeah, it's because lots of people, they hear so much, different things about En.ki, and, here you are, you're describing En.ki as a master manipulator, so people are like, okay, what's going on? Yeah,
I know, and that's really where it caught fire on YouTube. It said, the guy who met En.ki and lives to tell. I mean, it's just like it was it was a good hook, I guess. It baited a lot of people into it. And yeah, I know it's upsetting people still. It's weird though, the people that are upset with me tend to write comments.
Oh, yes.
On YouTube. And so I guess typically they're called trolls, but I don't think that's really the case. They just like the anonymity because those people are not writing email to me. I mean, the amount of negative email I've gotten over the years has diminished down to almost nothing. And watch now that I say that, I'll get.
You're going to get one now.
I'm going to get a bunch. But that has been the trend. I'm just being honest now, transparent as possible. In fact, not only is the amount of email increased, but the level of awareness that I'm seeing in these people that I'm engaging through email is that they are, very alert, very aware, very awake, and that they want to be proactive now. And that's why they're contacting me. They're trying to get some sort of guidance or advice or directions. So I'm really, very optimistic that this was not a futile exercise on my part, just to discuss the matter publicly.
Yeah, I agree. And also you had mentioned that, the last time we talked on, believe on Skype, you also had said you kind of forgot to go over the last entity featured in the last chapter of the modern day Bible that depicts Lucifer and En.ki. Yeah, we've kind of forgot.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm talking over you.
That's okay.
Yes, I remember that now. Yes. I mean, look, that's supposedly a dream vision, or maybe he was in an astral plane. I don't know. It's hard to tell. That stuff is very ambiguous. The description of the character that's dictating to John or whoever this person is in Revelation, taking down the notes, basically taking directions from this authority figure that most people interpret as Christ. I don't see it like that at all. It sounds exactly like En.ki. I mean, everything about it seemed like him.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I just think lots of people have been completely influenced by Zecharia Sitchin over the years.
Yeah, and I mean, they picked the right person to do that job, because I'm sure that Zecharia believed what he was saying in that regard. He was a useful idiot, and because honestly, his books are written like very childish. The whole thing is
he's not he's not a very good writer.
Well, I know he had help too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Every writer has at least one editor that looks at their work and helps them make changes. I mean, I'm an editor, so I can do it for myself, but in my early years, I definitely relied on various people to edit my work, and eventually I got good enough that I could do it myself. But so there's more than one voice. I mean, look, honestly, I'll give you another example. Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, real name. His work was fantastic, but you know why it was so good is because his wife was editing it. He took all the credit.
Yeah, that's kind of typical in the way show business works, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, also in that particular era, women were essentially second-class citizens. So, yeah, she just had to take a kind of a silent role. And I'm sure she benefited from it somewhat, but yeah, she was actually, had a huge impact on the final product.
Oh, yes. And, one other thing that's been going on, and I'm quite aware that you're most likely aware of this one. The media went crazy not so long ago over that UFO footage that was released. It caught headlines all over the place.
Yeah.
Sort of a soft disclosure, sorta.
Yeah. Sorta.
Kinda.
It wasn't really disclosure.
Yeah,
it was
really
more
wasn't.
just it was an admission that they know about this activity. They didn't give us any more information, really. They just admitted that they're still studying it secretly, like they've been doing all along.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since, and it didn't start in the 40s. It started in the 30s at Cape Girardeau. I think that's Missouri, when there was a crash landing there. Yeah, Cape Girardeau. Then there was another crash or shoot down in Los Angeles, behind Los Angeles, is possibly even off the coast of San Diego or Los Angeles area in 40s. It was early 40s, so-called Battle of LA. That's not the only thing that happened. There was multiple events that happened around that area at various times. So yeah, there was recoveries that this is all in hindsight now, but I mean, I don't know what people are expecting from the government that lies and hides things. They're not, why would they suddenly start telling us the truth and reveal things?
Yeah, that's one thing that's bothered me more so than Tom DeLonge being involved in that.
Well, look, John Rappaport has done the best reporting on this. I mean, he's really used some critical thinking on the matter, and he's right. The so-called team that Tom put together is a bunch of spooks from the Pentagon. I don't think that was his idea at all.
Yeah, those were CIA affiliates. Go ahead.
Affiliates. No, they're retired spooks. They're military intelligence people, agents, field agents, analysts, operatives. I mean, come on. Their job is to... They said this, by the way, in their own writing. They admit they even lie to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they lie to us routinely, and they control the narrative. I mean, psychological warfare, social engineering, whatever you want to call it. They chose DeLonge, whoever they are, chose DeLonge to be the front man for this effort, this latest manipulation of the public's perception. They've been controlling things since day one. But one of the reasons they chose DeLonge, and why all the people on his so-called team are retired, there's a couple reasons. DeLonge is not somebody who's considered credible by most people because he's a musician. I mean, if he was a physicist, maybe they would give it more credibility or something like that. But DeLonge was chosen for a reason. He's very willing to go along with whatever he's told.
And he's willing to pay the bill.
Well, because he thinks there's a huge paycheck at the end of this merchandising thing he's trying to put together.
Of course.
So there's that motivation. I mean, there's from what I was told from John Podesta's public relations firm, the one time I spoke to a Mr. Rothschild, Ed Rothschild was there working at that agency. He's no longer there, but yeah, he was basically a handler for Podesta, and he told me that the reason that disclosure wouldn't happen directly is because whoever, let's just say somebody from the FBI, was to get up and hold a press conference and say, yes, we've recovered this and that, and we've known about it for X amount of years. The X-Files are real, basically. Well, then that individual and that agency would be publicly held accountable, and not only that, whatever they said, they would then be the public would demand that they divulge even more, because I mean, there's no way you could explain all this in just sound bites in a press conference. So they would demand to know more, like how long there's just no way that they could. It's a can of worms, all right? And yes, it does have the potential to destabilize society on some level if they were to divulge everything.
Yeah, I still thought it's a positive step forward that some of this caught some of the attention of the media, But
Wait, whoa, no, hold on. No, it didn't.
It didn't.
That was all, no, because everything at the New York Times is sanctioned by the Pentagon, or at least some elements with yes, they are the deep state. Like, the media is supposed to be the fourth estate or the fourth branch of government. It's unelected, but they work hand in glove with, the machine, Washington, specifically the Pentagon. When it comes to this issue, that the media has been the method or the means that psychological warfare has been committed against the psyche of the American public. In other words, every time somebody came forward, doesn't matter how credible they are, the media would go into the immediate debunking mode.
Oh, right.
All right. So they had to have had this green lighted by the Pentagon, that they wanted this to be treated differently. And the reason that this is because there's two factions. This way it was described to me by Command Sergeant Major Robert Dean. He said that years ago, he told me this, that there were two factions that are battling it out. And one group really does want to, explain what's going on, call it disclosure or whatever. They'd like people to be aware of it. The other group does not. That part is real. However, what we're getting though is kind of a compromised version.
Oh, of course. I'm not disagreeing with you. All I'm saying is that it's good that there was some sort of coverage on it. It's good to see that it's there, but then you look at behind the scenes, and that's when the waters become a little muddy. Yeah,
I'm just saying their intent was
not good.
Not good. I mean, they want to control the narrative. It was like the compromise was, look, we'll let you leak a little bit of this stuff out and admit this is going on, but we're not going to let you go too far. You can't show samples. You can't disclose the rest of what Bigelow is really studying through NIDS. Specifically, look, George Knapp kind of let it slip in a recent interview he had with Linda Moulton Howe that Bigelow knows a lot, and he's not talking. He's told George Knapp some things confidentially. So Knapp, being a reporter, listened, but he's also being respectful and is not going to divulge anything unless he gets approval on it, or authorization from Mr. Bigelow. But Bigelow has not just samples. He's got a ton of scientific data on these portals, because he didn't just buy the Skinwalker Ranch for a period of time and study what was happening there between parallel dimensions or universes. He bought multiple ranches that have this issue. And so I don't think he was doing it because he's bored. I think he is an asset. You don't have to work directly for the CIA. I mean, you don't have to be a card-carrying member of the agency checking in, punching the clock. You can easily become an asset. Anybody can be an asset to them. It's really simple. It's very simple. They use people.
Yeah, that's always what's going on behind the scenes. It's always something awful going on. That's usually the case. We see it time and time again. And the media, as you said, it is controlled, definitely. And I say this on the program all the time, how most people out there, good 70 to 85% of people, are completely brainwashed because of the media.
Programming, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's part of the social engineering. It is part of psychological warfare. The example, the most blatant example I can think of is how I ended up being the one to break the story about UFO activity in Washington, D.C. The photographs were real. They're authenticated. That event really happened September 16, 2002, at night, in the middle of the night. At the Capitol, a swarm of UFOs appeared over the Capitol. One of them landed on the roof. It should have never happened, but it did, and it was caught on film, 35 millimeter film. And that individual, Mr. Allen, took the pictures, submitted them to the station chief for ABC News in Washington, D.C., because that's where he'd been working for 14 years prior to taking those photos. They refused to do anything with them. That was true for NBC and CBS. The only media outlet that started to show any interest was National Geographic, because the photographs were extraordinary as far as the quality. Oh, naturally, the content's more important, but they're really big on quality photographs. They're known for that. Their photography is top notch.
Right.
Historically, that's been the case. Well, one of the managing editors there wanted to run the story, and then he was fired. shortly after showing an interest in those photographs and that story.
How convenient.
Because can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if National Geographic published these pictures with the story back in 2002?
Oh,
I think it would have got a lot of people's attention.
A lot more attention than it would now. That's for sure.
People are still not paying attention to it because the point is the major media is still refusing to air that report that not just yes, the events of July 16, 2002 were extraordinary. But where I came into it was the reason I wrote my first book, Close Encounters on Capitol Hill.
Right. I was just going to ask you that.
It's because what I found as I was reporting on that one particular event, I was trying to put it into context, and I found that there was this huge amount of activity that had gone largely unreported. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I mean, like we've been discussing, because the implications of all that are enormous. And yes, it's unsettling, but you know what? It's reality. So I think to live in denial of that reality is I think it's to our detriment. Okay. But we have incontrovertible proof that UFO activity has been, accelerated, or at least the reporting of it has accelerated in the late 40s all the way up into 2000s. It was the year 2002 when it seemed to take a whole new, almost like, a fire had been reignited.
Right.
And the activity was even higher than during the 50s. Most people think 1952 is a peak year, and it was. Because, and at that time, the media actually did have a press conference about the issue at the Pentagon. And, Pentagon actually said quite a bit, and most of it wasn't reported about the events that were happening in DC proper. So they reported it 3 times, a couple times in July and once in, September. But there was, to my best estimate, there was over 80 UFO events that occurred in Washington, D.C. in 1952. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
What Daryl Sims, who, if anybody doesn't know Daryl, you just look him up, the UFO hunter, also a former CIA guy, told me that he was told that at that time, and that was actually the year he was born, he said that the military thought that they were being invaded, which is probably accurate. I mean, I wouldn't dismiss that. It's a real possibility. However, the invasion didn't start in 1952, and whatever conflict has been raging in the heavens, and that would include us because we're part of it. I mean, Earth is part of the heavens.
Right.
That's been going on for a long time, and somehow we are involved in it. And getting a straight answer on that is really difficult. But that's typical warfare. They say the first casualty of war is truth.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. I wish it wasn't the case. So anyway, all these years later, I wrote 2 books on the subject. The second book was actually far more in depth. There was over 900, there is, I should say, in, what's it called? Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. Contains information from 1850 to 2011. There's over 900 reports of eyewitness accounts of UFO and or extraterrestrial activity in our nation's capital. You would think that somebody would have paid attention. And again, this is why I contacted Podesta's PR firm, because, he'd gone on the record, by the way, in 2002, same year that these things swarmed the Capitol. He went on the record in October and said, well, the public needs to know they can handle it. We should just tell them. It didn't happen. So he's one of the guys that would like to get it out. I personally think he's a very creepy guy. Obviously, his brother is he's a pedophile of some kind.
You might have a lawsuit here.
Sorry?
I said, we might have a lawsuit here. It's a joke, Robert. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's a joke. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no funny. It's not funny. I mean, Jesus, I wish none of that was going on. But, hey, look, since we're at it, I'm going to tell you something. There was a guy contacted me years ago who had acquired a manuscript from a retired police officer, and it was called Terminate with Extreme Prejudice. That was the name of the book. It was not a fiction book. It was really disturbing. And what's relevant to this conversation is that he was working in a town in Michigan, which is historically known as a high frequency of UFO sightings or activity around the lakes. And what he admitted in the book was that there were quite a few high-level Masons were basically running everything in that area, and that some of them were involved in satanic practices. And here's what happened.
Oh, boy.
This is what just it broke. It was the straw that broke his back.
Right.
I mean, as far as being law enforcement. Children were going missing in the area from prominent families' homes. And of course, naturally the families were distraught. They sought the help of the police. The police chief at the time issued, or I should say assigned individuals to investigate, naturally. One of them was this individual. He went on a stakeout on this island, small island on a river. When I say a river, some rivers, as you might know, are very wide. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
He went out to the river and he was assigned there and had brought surveillance equipment with him. He witnessed some of the missing, and he was told not to engage no matter what he saw. If he saw anything, he was only to do surveillance.
Oh, wow.
So he claimed that he had equipment that would work, and that he witnessed and allegedly recorded some of the missing children being brought to that island, and a satanic ritual was conducted with drugs, sex, symbols, like pentagrams, etc.
Right.
Chanting. And these were adults that had brought these kids there, engaged in that behavior. And around dawn, a spacecraft showed up and took the kids.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's pretty dark.
Well, hey, look, if it really happened, maybe now you understand why the Pentagon is not talking about the full implications. I mean, disclosure,
yeah.
Come on. It's one thing if I'm nobody, if I'm just telling you this, just you and I talking, but I read that report, and eventually the person who had asked me to look at it and help him publish it, I bypassed him, and I actually spoke to the officer who was retired. And this guy was not kidding around at all. And his life had turned basically into hell after he wrote that manuscript and tried to pass it over to others to publish, because there is no such thing as privacy, especially in that world. When you're dealing with that level of stuff, criminal activity, this is well organized crime, because some of these guys were in law enforcement. Some of the guys that were perpetrating this were in law enforcement. So here's what happened. When this officer did the surveillance, and he waited till everybody was gone, he went back and he took the recording devices, cameras, etc., back to the police station and reported to the chief. The cameras had malfunctioned. The tape recording machines were they just had like white noise. Somehow this had all been erased, or it just wouldn't record for whatever reason. Okay. When he tried to explain this to the chief believed what he was saying and promised he was going to look further into it. And, I don't know, it was shortly after that the police chief, was murdered.
Jesus Christ.
And now I'm just taking this gentleman's word for it, but he seemed pretty damn shook up about it. I would be.
Yeah.
If I was in that position. And look,
that's heavy stuff.
This is the whole reason why you call it terminate with extreme prejudice, because when you cross the line with these people, it's not like, hey, we want you to stop, please. Once you become a threat to them, they will eliminate you. They will terminate you with extreme prejudice. So when I told you this, what started this was a gentleman I'd never met, but he heard about me, asked me if I would help him publish that book. It wasn't well written, but the content was just very compelling.
Yeah, it was solid.
So that's why I insisted. I said, look, I'm not going to help you unless you introduce me to the author, because you could have just made all this crap up. So that's how I actually spoke to the officer who he had to retire. He really did. I would have run for my life. And apparently he did. And of course they continued to follow him.
Oh no.
And make his life miserable. And when I say them, look, it wasn't just the inner circle of the Masons that was doing this. They're in cahoots with these entities. These satanic practices is not just somebody getting jollies torturing kids and animals. They're doing it as a sacrifice, as an offering to these entities to show their willingness to do whatever it basically serve their agenda. The satanic Luciferian agenda is very real. And so, they take it very seriously. Naturally, this was something I looked at, and, ultimately I told those guys both, let's just call him the literary agent, allegedly, and the retired police officer. I told them, there's no way this is going to get published. I can't really go against the powers that be. I mean, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I said, they're not going to let it happen. I said, besides, even if you got it out there, most people don't have enough background to realize that this isn't fiction. They're going to think you're making it up.
Yeah, they're going to think you're nuts.
Oh, well, I mean, look, if they had written it as fiction, I think a lot of people like horror story fiction. It sells pretty well.
Yeah, it's still popular.
It's popular, but the most popular genre is romance.
Yuck.
I know, especially, and more recently, it's been paranormal romance, including like vampire sex and all that crazy.
Yeah, that's
whatever.
That's
I
awful.
mean, look, this is just telling you, I don't read that crap. I'm just, as an author, I have to know what's going on. What is the trends in the market?
Well, of course, for sure.
So that's the only reason I know that. I don't read that stuff.
Well, you know a lot about this, Robert.
Oh my God. Look, Michael, I'm telling you, I became one of the leading experts in the field. I don't need a freaking medal or whatever,
Right.
UFO researcher award or something like that. My reward is knowing that I'm actually reaching a certain amount of people. I mean, really connecting.
You really are. And I think that's why a lot of people do like and respect you, Robert, that because of the way you are. You're uncorrupted.
So far, the thing is, we'll see how it goes tomorrow, because I have some revelations I'm going to drop on the YouTube audience. And I know it's going to bother a lot of people. I mean, this is a whole nother level of triggering.
We're bothering people now.
I know, but yes, but I think because it's a visual medium, I've been trying to use some theatrical things in a way that's going to hopefully make people pay more attention. Because, right now, everybody is so distracted
Big time,
with their devices. It's hard to keep people's attention. And I want, as long as I'm doing it and people are watching to some extent, I'm trying to take advantage of the medium. I'm not playing games with them. I'm just, the thing is, we're conditioned to respond to certain things. I know that.
Trigger words, right.
Yes. So I'm not doing it just to be sensational, although I know a lot of people are just, it doesn't matter what I do. There's going to be haters that just, freak out.
That happens.
Yeah. So knowing that, I'm just going to do what I feel is best and tell the rest of, or more of my story and my involvement with, Nordics and artificial intelligence and when I was living in Los Angeles. And, it's like, I don't know if you ever tune into Leak Project, but that seems to be where I have the biggest audience right now. And, for whatever reason, so it's going to give me an opportunity to demonstrate something to people that, it's going to disturb them, but it's necessary. Okay. We all need to get past some things. I think,
sometimes you have to. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do that sort of thing. So,
there's a lot of misperceptions. And so I'm going to try and clear the air. We'll see how that goes. I'm sure there'll be blowback, but whatever.
Oh, you can't win them all.
Well, I know I can't please everybody. I'm not even trying to.
Yeah. It's better, it's better to just not throw any caution to the wind.
Well, look, I have to factor in and be respectful of my family. I'm not going to do anything that's reckless, but I do have a right to just tell my story and, also share some of my research. As long as I'm not accusing people of things directly, and as long as I'm not trying to incite people, that's one of the big problems when you organize, and historically, when humans try to rally around a cause, they're typically inciting each other to do things, giving each other license to commit acts that are very destructive, ultimately. That's one of the reasons I don't belong to any group or organization, political, philosophical, religious, none of that, because I know they're all easily corrupted.
Oh, yes. You sound like me, Robert.
Well, look, there's a lot of people that increasingly are feeling that way. I had to break away at an early age in order I told you, when that thing happened to me, it was one of my survival techniques was to realize, actually, I think I'd already started breaking away earlier than that, because when I was 13, I began traveling. So from age 13 to 15, I was traveling, and I went to 57 countries in a very short time. And that broke me away from my peer group and even the whole concept of being an American and all that stuff. It kind of broke my paradigm.
Well, that's the one
they were trying to overlay on me. So, the whole school system and everything, it didn't make sense to me. I couldn't integrate very well after having those experiences traveling around. I mean, granted, it's not a whole lot of the world. It sounds like a lot, but it's really, I think there's like almost 200 countries. Look, even just recently, I moved here to Hong Kong in 2015, and I noticed it has changed me again.
Well, of course. How can it not?
Yeah, so, and not, I mean, in a good way. It's affected me positively. Mm-hmm. But, I feel so, but I know, as I just said, when I was a teenager, I traveled for 2 years intensively. As I grow older, there's a time coming where I will travel again. There's a place in Siberia I'd love to go. But there's other places. I'm just saying, I mean, so now I'm at 58 countries. I'm 58 years old, but I know it's coming. I feel it in my bones. It's really obvious. There's a sort of we have free will, but there's a lot going on here.
A bit of a calling.
Well, okay. So the Germans had a phrase for this, Götterdämmerung. It means the fate of the gods.
We've got a lot of German listeners, by the way.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah. Oh, Guten Morgen to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Madame and Herren, yes. Good morning.
You're going to gain even more German listeners after that one.
Yeah, I mean, I already have people writing me from all over the world, including Germany, etc. But yeah, so anyway, we are all influenced by the fate of the gods because they are above us in the hierarchical system here in this particular reality. This simulated reality is controlled very much by them. And we're part of these empires that are competing with one another. And so that's what I was trying to say before, is that we're kind of caught up in that. Most people are unaware of it. And yes, if it was officially announced that this was going on between these various forces of good and evil, light and dark, truth and lie, yeah, it would probably I'm sure it would freak people out.
Right.
Not everybody, but, most people still, they're under the influence. They really buy the lie.
They're brainwashed.
Right. And honestly, so were the German people. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but they were desperate. They'd been manipulated into that.
Right.
And most of them were, quite a bit of the population was on meth. It was commonly used. They thought it was like, drinking a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's normal for them.
Right. So but the reason I bring it up is because, meth is when a person uses meth or cocaine, it does something to their chakra system that allows them to be more easily manipulated or possessed by these archonic, demonic entities. And this was known. This was known to the secret society. So it was like, it wasn't an accident this happened. And ultimately, look at what America has become since mainly the 60s, but it already started. Most all of our the American and British soldiers were on amphetamine. Same difference. Any kind of stimulant like that artificially is a way of hacking into the human, what do you call it? What was the word I used? Psycho-spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
It's like breaking down your firewall, giving you a backdoor.
Right.
To the avatar or body.
Trojan virus, right.
Like that. Yep. And that wasn't the only drug. I mean, heroin was another one that was synthesized out of Germany, and very
nasty stuff.
I mean, because opium itself out of the plant it's it's a little bit, well, I mean, that has been around for thousands of years, and it didn't really mess people up as badly as heroin and then other opioid type of, synthesized opiate. It wasn't.
Yeah, once it's corrupted by man, that's when it gets pretty bad. Like cocaine, the leaves are actually health beneficial
if you
for us.
chew it. Yes,
exactly.
if you chew it or you make a tea out of it, correct.
But once it gets corrupted by man and they start adding all these different chemicals in it, that's when it gets really bad.
Yeah, it's the same thing with cannabis. What's happened is they turned it into frankenweed with this, all these things that they're doing in indoors. Then they take it and they're making so-called synthetic versions like flakka. Those people go nuts. They turn into zombies. They're like trying to eat other people and stuff. I mean, it's really sick.
In Florida.
Yeah, that was nuts, man.
It really is. There was some sort of strange epidemic going on out there with that synthetic marijuana. It's awful.
Allegedly. Well, I don't know what it really is, but now the thing is this elephant tranquilizer that's come into America from China. I forget what they call it. Yeah, but anyway, just a tiny bit of that. It's like, it'll kill you.
Oh, yeah. Definitely would kill you.
So, before that it was PCP. That's a horse tranquilizer.
Right,
and,
PCP.
Mescaline was brought in too by the military. It's just all this stuff, LSD, mescaline, PCP, all that crap was intentionally done. So it's not just one level of programming. They're doing it, like I said, it's a psycho-spiritual hack job that they're doing on pretty much everybody as much as they can.
Yeah, all of these things definitely alter your behavior and your perception of everything around you. And all of these sort of things have been used since the dawn of time to control man. And it's really awful. Especially in the Book of the Dead, I always refer to that. That's when you kind of got a glimpse of that. People being controlled.
But they used, right, but my understanding, because I read that book years ago, when I was a kid actually, but yes, they used certain substances, but it was to induce an out-of-body experience. That was typical. And all that was doing is helping that individual come to a realization or preparation that they were more than a physical body, and at some point they would leave that body behind. So I don't see that I don't think it was like a drug abuse thing. It was more of an initiatory rite.
Understood. And I did want to get your opinion really quickly on abduction cases. Some of the classic abduction cases that we hear about so often. What exactly is your opinion on that? We never really had that discussion. Do you think some of these individuals who are more popular than others are, I guess you could say, legit? Or do you think they're adding a little bit of, a little extra on that story?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some truth and some lies. The thing about Betty and Barney Hill was the first one that really got notoriety was that Barney was adamant. He said they look like Nazis. And I think he was right. I do think that some of them were, or are, based on my experience and also the research after the fact, after my experiences. But the thing about abduction is it's kind of a misleading term in that, when a person is abducted by another human, they're not returned unless there was a ransom paid. Right. Usually. There's a reason for you when you abduct someone. They're either being sexually abused or held for ransom. But these people are all returned, if you believe their stories are accurate, most all these people are returned fairly intact, and there's no questions asked by anybody. However, we know there are a lot of people that go missing. The numbers are very vague because some of them are found, but generally speaking, there are a huge number of people that go missing around the planet every year. If you want to look it up, check it out. The most intriguing study that's ever been done that's out in the mainstream or the public record is what's his name, the 411 guy. It's not David Sarita, is it?
David Sarita?
No, I'm thinking somebody else. Okay, what was the name of the guy that did the missing 411? Hold on.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about.
Okay, I got to get his name now since I mentioned it, otherwise people won't understand.
Yeah, I think he does plenty of interviews about missing people.
Yeah, but
right?
I want to get his name right. Oh God. Author. What's his name? David Paulides.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, sorry. I was confusing with somebody else, and I shouldn't do that.
It's all right. It happens.
So, well, here we're going to go again. This is a retired police officer investigating where these missing people are going, and he's been very cautious not to say who he thinks is perpetrating these abductions. Now that classifies as an abduction. When somebody goes missing, someone goes missing, and they're typically never returned, or an area will be searched just by number of people over a period of time, and then like suddenly the body will just appear in the same place has been searched by multiple people multiple times. The body just boom, there it is, and it's in a way that is completely incomprehensible to standard law enforcement procedure. It doesn't fit. Is what I'm saying. These things are so out of place. The other thing he noted was that they're happening for whatever reason. He's focused on the fact that they happen at a much higher frequency or rate in the national parks.
Yeah, David Paulides, I think that's his name.
David Paulides, yep. So, or you could just Google missing 411 if anybody's interested. I think pretty much everybody in this audience would know it by now, but just telling you, David came across this fairly recently, and he's been very public about it. And in fact, the most recent book, he actually started to open up a little bit about something, and I'll just relate it to you very briefly. And in that, it was John Maccabee, Bruce Maccabee, the guy who does all that, the optical physicist who's been studying UFOs for years.
Yeah, I've interviewed him once.
Okay, so he's formerly with the Navy. He lives in Silver Spring, Maryland. He's worked for the government, but he seems like he's trying to help somewhat. His wife was almost abducted when she was bow hunting with some friends, and she was up in a blind, meaning that she was up a tree in a place that would camouflage her from wildlife seeing her or smelling her, and she was stalked by something that we would typically identify from the movie Predator. The invisibility, the cloak. Optical stealth.
Right.
And, sorry?
Oh, I said right, yeah, that cloak, that device, whatever the
right.
Predator was using there in the movie.
There was something up in the trees with her that was moving around, and it caused an extreme stillness in the air and silence, and she knew that she was in trouble, and she started trying to take pictures with her cell phone, and it caught something that it shouldn't have or couldn't have if you just go by the standard metric of photography. That got her husband it caught all of his attention because, first of all, it's his wife. Second of all, photography has been his life.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard.
He's not one of the best, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He's not one of the best. He's more old school.
Very old school.
He's not up to date with the new stuff. But anyway, so David Paulides was willing to at least admit that that's a possibility, that a predator type of entity really could be responsible, because if it has those kind of capabilities of optical stealth or even suppressing all kinds of audio, and it's big, a big, strong entity like that, like what we saw in the movie Predator, it could actually snatch people, children, adults, without a trace, pretty much. I don't know how it doesn't leave footprints. That's pretty amazing.
I've never heard this before.
Yeah, well, that was his latest book about hunters that have gone missing. Fortunately, Bruce Maccabee's wife wasn't. Something happened, and it decided not to try and grab her. But she felt like she was going to be grabbed by something. She thought it was a wild animal. She wasn't thinking predator. It was only later when they were talking about it, and I think somebody said, did it look anything like this? And they showed her a clip from the movie, and she started having a panic attack.
Oh, wow.
Because it was so similar.
Yeah, he never told that story on the air.
Oh, no way. No, well, first of all, it didn't happen to him. Second of all, David Paulides is the one that's handling this. Bruce doesn't know anything about that stuff. I mean, he knows it happened, but, look, he's an old guy at this point. He's really old school.
Yeah, he was old when I interviewed him.
Yeah, so he's having a hard time with certain things. I know that because he interacted with Mr. Allen about the Washington, D.C. photos, so I've heard things. Direct, I mean, not hearsay, but literally seen. He tried to, I know he's not happy about some of the stuff he feels compelled not to ever talk about because, again, I'm sure he's collecting a pension from the Navy. And, although he did work with NICAP out of Washington, D.C., which was allegedly a civilian agency, but you had people like, Rear Admiral, Hillenkotter, who was the first head of the CIA, who was, he was on the team. And then you had Bruce Maccabee, Navy. Then you had, Major Donald Kehoe, Marines. So once again, hey, Tom DeLonge, wake up, dude. You're not the first to have a team of retired military people come together and try and share information with the public. And in fact, Major Kehoe was a very eloquent spokesperson with the media. You can see that. You can read it. You can see it. He tried, but the media wouldn't cooperate because they were ordered not to. He had plenty of evidence. It makes that stuff in that stupid stuff that they released recently. I mean, honestly, they've had gun camera footage.
Yes.
From military aircraft since the 40s and 50s. And I'm not talking about really crappy like cameras. Military, especially Air Force, has always had super high speed cameras. Ridiculous how fast those cameras are. So they'd have to be, think about it, if you're in a dogfight or you're doing surveillance, over an area, you better have some damn good cameras.
Yeah, that's another thing. That footage was a little odd to me too.
It's very nondescript, man. I mean, yeah, okay, it's unidentified. Now what?
Yeah.
It looks like a Tic Tac. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. It darted away at a high rate of speed. Again, you're not telling me anything that hasn't already been in the public record for decades.
I know, right? That's true.
The problem is, Michael, most people don't know that because they don't see, like you said, they're programmed not to respond because it doesn't affect their bottom line, which is how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to pay my bills this month? Because I'm one paycheck away from being frickin' homeless. Okay. Don't bother me with that crap.
Yeah. That's the mindset.
But it's a big mindset for most people. And I'm not disparaging them. Please understand me. I really sympathize with people that are in that situation because that's most Americans now.
Of course. Right.
The middle class has been decimated. I was fortunate to grow up. I was born in 59. So I grew up during the 60s and 70s and there was still a fairly good middle class. And I lived a middle class existence in America, which compared to most people on the planet is a very high standard of living. It's not perfect, but it was a very high standard of living. I only know that now in retrospect. Well, actually, when I started traveling as a teenager, I started to see it. It really opened my eyes painfully.
Yeah.
Most people on the planet live. It isn't pretty. It isn't pretty at all. Honestly, I think this entire planet's a shithole, to tell you the truth.
Oh, it is.
Compared to what it could be or was in the past, at least at one point, I do think it was a paradise planet. It certainly has a potential, like any other planet. It has a potential to be something beautiful and peaceful and loving and symbiotic, but this is the direction we've been dragged into for whatever reason.
Man is wolf to man is what I've learned.
Oh, I don't know. I think that like I said, it didn't have to be like that. And
it doesn't, but that's the nature of what we exist in today because people are not consciously awoken, in my opinion. People like backtracking to people being brainwashed. It's just, that's how people are programmed nowadays and forever it seems it's going to be that way.
It just seems that way. Here's something you need to understand. About 14,000 years ago, whatever hit this planet and caused what some people call it the Great Flood if you look at it religiously. Other scientific people would say it was the Younger Dryas event. It wiped out over 95% of all humanity. Okay, let's go with that. Then how did we get the diversity and the numbers we have now of 7 billion and counting? Not to mention all the various races. It couldn't be from one family. It couldn't. So something's not right here. We are not being told. That's the other thing. We are not allowed to know the entire true history of the various groups that have colonized or attempted to colonize this world over the entire history of the planet. But more importantly, this whatever caused the extinction level event, it opened the door for a whole new type of colonization and civilization. Or, I mean, it's not really very civilized, but I'm just saying that the various civilizations that have risen and fallen here
Right.
have all been very warlike. In the recent past, I'm not sure it was always. In fact, I can't believe it was like this the entire time. But who knows? We can't get access to all that stuff.
Yeah, most of our human origins seem to be a bit of a mystery still.
Well, I mean, it depends who you talk to. Other people say, no, modern academia has figured it all out. It's all in the book, you know. I mean, what are you talking about? We've risen from apes, and
Right.
It's all evolution, and we're all here alone, and we're just bad actors.
Yeah, I don't really buy that.
No, I can't buy it either. I mean, and of course in religious writings, not just Christianity, but this whole concept of good and evil seems like foundational. It's everywhere. That is definitely a factor in, again, it's not an excuse, all right? Like I was saying about the Germans being dragged into that direction. A lot of them were desperate. So it wasn't just the drugs. Financially, they've been ruined after World War I. The Versailles Treaty just crippled them. Financially, economically, they were ruined. So that was what made the conditions right for the Nazi Party to come to power. Because nobody would have come with that. It's not like by the way, they didn't just start off just gassing people. They started off by improving the infrastructure and making sure that people were not suffering as much, you know, reducing the amount of homeless, etc. So they did some good for the country, but the ultimate outcome was horrendous.
Right. And before we go on to a different topic, I did want to ask you a little bit about the whole massacre in Las Vegas. I know you've been really into that, but before we'll save that for the end. But You sent me a very interesting PDF, which I was a little surprised about it because it's been a number of years since I've heard it. The Theia Prophecy. A lot of people don't even know about this.
Right.
And I think it might have been a guest or a listener who was telling me about it years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been a really interesting story that many people in the UFO circles or inner communities don't ever touch on.
Well, there's a lot of contactee stories like that out there. And again, this is something, you know, the whole field in general is deemed not credible. So there's no way. And plus, his alleged contacts with these spiritually advanced beings, they didn't want to give him any quote unquote proof.
Right.
Because I'm sure if they had, his life would have been turned upside down, probably threatened, his family would have suffered. The so-called proof would have been confiscated or destroyed. Because that's just the level of control that goes on here. You remember also too, he said that there were things he had promised he wouldn't talk about.
Yeah.
That was revealed to him. Yeah. And that would be the conflict that's going on here. It has been raging for some time. So we've never been left to our own devices. We've always been watched. There's always been levels of interaction. Some of it is benevolent and some of it is malevolent. And it makes things very complicated to sort through it. So Theia contact, interesting. Yeah. Some of that I can see very much happening. And I appreciate that they were trying to give him some insights about the alleged true history of this world. There's a lot of different accounts people have come forward with, you know, what really happened, but none of that stuff can be substantiated or validated. It just isn't happening. So I shared that book because it was sent to me. I was already aware of it, but it was sent to me again last year. Somebody said, "What's your thoughts?" Okay. So now I'm forced to think about it. The only way I can do that is to read it. And it took me a while to get around to reading it. But once I did, I thought, yeah, here's an example of what, our planet could be like if we choose to make it so. And yes, I know there's other beings here that would help us if we make that choice. But people are so conditioned here. I don't know how that's going to happen, really. We could reach a tipping point. We could. I'm not going to give up. I'm just being realistic about it all. That's a huge undertaking, you know, just because the conditioning has been so good for so long. I mean, as far as it's very effective. they have really taken an extreme amount of time and effort into turning us into sheeple.
Yeah, they've done a good job.
Yeah. So again, this is another reason why we're not being told. It's not all a bunch of satanic, devil worshiping, whatever. You know, there are these benevolent beings that if the government or the Vatican were to disclose or let us see that whole reality, or better yet, allow us to have an open interaction. Can you imagine what that would be like? Having an open interaction with somebody from Tia Uba on like, I don't know, a webcast. Because at this point, people don't trust the media. If they showed up on the mainstream media, people would just think they're being screwed with.
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's what it's come down to. Citizen journalism is actually has more credibility up to a point. So, but yeah, if we could actually get a benevolent extraterrestrial to grant an interview, that would be a good first step. And then that would hopefully lead to like a peaceful landing where they could demonstrate some things, their benevolence to us and their intent, and ultimately artifacts and other things that would, you know, because you have to vet these things. You can't just take their word for it. Like I said, we've been lied to for so long. It's like I'm expecting that if something like that were to happen, it would probably be under false pretenses to further their agenda to keep us enslaved. Like, oh my God, it's a savior. Let's worship them. Let's do whatever they say. And if they go along with that, and if they're like, yeah, you should do that, you know, we're here to save you. Oh, no, I would be the first person to say bullshit, you know, prove it. Who are you, really?
No, I agree. Yeah. And by the way, one other name I forgot to mention is Travis Walton.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how do you feel about him? I had a chance to speak to him, but I let it pass.
Yeah, well, I don't know him, but one of the human extraterrestrial Nordics that I've made friends with here told me that he is friends with the people that were on board that ship.
Oh.
And that Travis stupidly stood up and ran over and wanted to touch the craft and got electrocuted.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, look, things happen in the heat of the moment. He did jump out of the truck, by the way, to get closer out. He ran away from the truck when his friends were telling him, no, no, no. He jumped out, ran over there, got close, and then that for whatever reason, he got too close and was electrocuted, had a heart attack. So naturally, the beings that were on board felt responsible to some degree, and that's why they took him on board and proceeded to give him medical assistance and ultimately stabilized him in a way. You know, that's another reason he was gone for a while. He was in bad shape. I mean, I guess clinically he was dead.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and he's actually talked to I've heard anyway that he's actually admitted this to other people quietly. But, you know, when Hollywood got a hold of it and they made that movie, Fire in the Sky, it just further muddied the waters and, you know, messed with people's minds. So I think he's just pretty quiet about it now, because what are you going to do? Yeah, he was abducted. That's a really weird term.
It kind of is, yeah.
Because he was returned unharmed, considering what had happened to him. I wouldn't call that abduction. I mean, it's like, if an ambulance comes and takes you to a hospital, is that an abduction? If they let you go, release you in 3 days?
Right.
I wouldn't call it that.
They borrowed him for a little.
Okay, well, they didn't really need him. They just felt responsible. I mean, this is the most logical explanation I've ever heard, and it's not discussed publicly, or I should say even in the so-called UFO community.
Right.
No, I've never heard anybody talk about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding.
By the way, Robert, how is the media over there in your side of the island?
It's okay. I mean, it's very controlled here. Last year, the Chinese government came across the border and they really did abduct a book publisher because they didn't like what he was publishing.
Oh man, they could do that?
Yes, they can. And they held him, for a period of time, and then they, you know, I don't know how they treated him, but he was held incommunicado, and then naturally his family were freaking out, and then they released him, and they said, "Don't do it again, because next time we're not going to let you out.
Damn.
It's going to be the end of you." Okay, so they put the fear of God in him. I don't think he's publishing those books anymore. So you got to watch it. This isn't a British colony anymore, and I'm not allowed to go in at this point. I'm in Hong Kong, and I have a visa for Hong Kong, but that's not the same. I would need to get a separate visa to go into mainland China, and I applied for that and was rejected. I found out later they don't like journalists. Didn't know that. I guess I should have. Well, whatever. I put it down. They said, "What do you do professionally?" And I told them. So,
red flag for them.
Yeah, they just said, "Try again later."
Yeah.
Okay. So if I really want to make an issue out of it, I know how I could do it, but it's not that important to me. And they honestly have nothing to fear from me. In fact, my wife is Chinese. So, and I have a deep respect for
their
Asian culture.
Right.
And more importantly, I understand it. I accept it for what it is. I'm not trying to hijack it or embarrass them, because I know that's a big thing in their culture, is what they call saving face. You don't do anything. I mean, it's a really big deal if you embarrass somebody or cause them to have shame, because it's not just them, it's their entire family you're bringing shame to. It's like there's this honor thing.
Yeah.
It used to be if somebody was shamed publicly in America, that was a big deal. Never as big a deal as it is here. But anyway,
right.
The thing I've come to understand too is this: America has projected its military presence all the way across the Pacific into Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan. Now, do you think, and Korea. So do you think that would make China just a little bit upset?
Of course.
So I think they have a right to do what they're doing to some degree. I don't know that it's always the right thing to do. But if I was them, I would be pretty damn upset, honestly. And the thing is, we helped them during World War II against the Japanese, and they know it.
Yeah, that's true.
But after World War II, when we entered Korea, they felt compelled to push us out, and which they did. But we've never left, did we? We only left North Korea. We stayed in South Korea.
That's true.
And we had a huge base in the Philippines until the volcano blew up, Pinatubo blew up and buried the base. So they left that alone. But Japan is a huge military base for the U.S. And then there's Guam, there's Hawaii. But the most nasty stuff that we have, as far as I know, is, in the Marshall Islands. That's where that's the command and control center for the really high tech stuff is there. Most people don't talk about it. It's heavy. What little I've been told about it, it's not your average standard whatever, but that was one of the things that we acquired by force during World War II.
Understood. Now, one last topic before we get rolling here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Even though I could talk to you for hours, but...
Yeah, no, you've got a really nice voice, Michael. Do you work in broadcasting at all?
Well, I flirted with the idea, and I try to get a few local gigs out here, but after a while, we go to a meeting and they listen to some of my stuff and they come back into the room and they look like I murdered someone.
Well, they probably don't like the subject matter.
Probably not.
You have a really great radio voice. I'm very sensitive to, I don't know why, but I study people's voices because I can read a lot into it. And you have a very pleasant voice and you seem like a very honest, straightforward person.
Maybe a little too honest. I get in trouble often.
Yeah, for the media.
I don't hold back. I'm pretty unfiltered. And I think that's cost a lot.
Okay, your delivery. I'm just saying, okay, look, there's a certain tenor or color to people's voices. And you just have that kind of, I would say you have a very, very distinct and pleasant radio voice.
Well, thank you for that. I'm definitely trying to get my foot back into that door. Also, I'm interested in doing voiceover work.
Yeah, you could definitely do that, man.
Oh, I would love to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't really think about it too much, but yes, I could see you doing that, or I could hear that happening.
It would be awesome if I could get on some sort of syndicated show. That's like $5,000 an episode.
You mean the total cost to pay you, or what do you, I'm sorry, you lost
Oh,
me
well,
there. How much?
when you're on one of these shows and it's syndicated, every time they air that specific episode that you're featured
I
in,
see.
that's like $5,000 in your pocket.
Oh, I see.
Money that I
Yeah.
don't have. So, of course, I would love to do that, but it's very difficult to get into any of these fields nowadays, especially radio. You kind of have to know someone nowadays. It's just, that's just the way the business goes. But, I like doing what I do here. It's fun, but
Sure.
I'd like to get paid a little bit more. But yes.
Did you study?
Thank you, by the way, for that.
Did you study journalism?
No, I grew up listening to radio and being obsessed with it, so.
Okay, me too. All right. So yeah, you do, this is what I'm hearing from you, is something very polished, very professional in your delivery. It's not just your voice, it's your manners and your style. It sounds like a professional broadcaster to me.
I'm a bit of a throwback, that's true. I'm not that old, but I mean, I've studied all the greats.
Let's see. Okay, so in Los Angeles, there was Ray Bream, somebody I liked a lot. I actually used to call in. And George, oh God, it'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it. But yeah, I used to listen to all the talk radio when it first came on. Even before that, I was always fascinated with radio. Darn it. So, the other thing is I actually was the first person in the media who was allowed to be the extraterrestrial correspondent on mainstream radio drive time news.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That was, I know most people don't because it was very early drive time, and it was called America's Morning News. That was killed off and then has reborn. It's been reborn. It's a completely different entity using the same name. I don't know why, but it was a talk radio network out of Oregon that was running it, but it was stationed in Washington D.C. And I'll send you the link to the archive that I created of those. Yeah, those clips, because I did it for an entire year. And they interviewed me a couple times about my book. They liked the book so much, and they liked my willingness to interact with them I already knew that they were going to make some fun of it. And I told the producer, it's okay, as long as we get the information out there. I understand, your hands are tied. You can't make this too credible. But, and so because I was willing to work with them, they said, hey, we want to make you our extraterrestrial correspondent every Friday morning. We're going to do this thing, That's amazing, by the way. Yeah, it is. And I helped them get ratings. I know they told me, there's like, oh man, you're actually boosting our ratings. That's the only reason they wanted to keep me on there. But, that's not why I was doing it. Yeah, I believe that. I mean, radio is terrible in the morning. Funny. Yeah, it's boring. I know, especially straight news. It's like, oh crap. It's mostly bad news. It's very, Yeah, morning drive stinks. That's true. Usually, or they're trying to be very salacious or inflammatory or whatever. And we were just actually laughing. Everybody was me and two other people, usually actually it was always a man and a woman. 90% of the time it was a man and a woman anchor out of Washington. They were affiliated with the Washington Times because John McCaslin, I believe, had worked for the Washington Times or was working as a journalist for the Washington Times, but he was the lead anchor for America's Morning News. Coincidentally, his father was a career FBI agent and had served with, J. Edgar Hoover and stuff. This guy was a no-nonsense guy who worked in D.C. his entire life. John grew up there. Mm-hmm. So when he got a copy of my book, my first book, Close Encounters on Capitol Hill, he freaked out. He's like, what is this? He's like, I grew up here, man. I didn't know this was going on. He absolutely, and then he showed it to his dad and he's like, yeah. He's like, what else is new? Yeah, it's like to him, like, yes, okay, you figured it out. And so, but yeah, they really, really treated me very well. It was good promotion for the book, but ultimately it didn't get the traction I was looking for. I kind of got bored after a year, and I went off and I started my own radio show I was producing, and it was a nightmare. I used Blog Talk, and it was a freaking nightmare. Blog Talk it sucks. It's awful. That's true. It's horrible. And so then a friend of mine who used to work, we don't know exactly what his role was. Anybody that says, I worked at the State Department that's usually code for something else. But anyway, he was working for the State Department for a number of years. He started his own radio show / streaming radio station. And he and I he actually was the first person I felt that understood the level of, work and the implications of it from law enforcement perspective, because he worked law enforcement for the State Department internationally. Okay. Whatever that means. He had that kind of mindset as this is a violation of law. That's how I looked at it. That's how he looked at it. When he read my book, this is a very intelligent guy, very patriotic. And so we had a really interesting rapport. When we got talking, he's like, "Oh, Robert, I can show you how you can do your own thing." So I foolishly thought that would be easy. And, I spent most of 2012 doing that. And, so anyway, I know how hard it is to produce a show.
I think I might have heard one of your shows, actually.
Yeah, and the guy, well, probably. It's out there. I mean, probably should just put them all on YouTube.
You should.
Yeah, it's kind of a hassle. I'll do it someday.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but I think you'd like it.
The individual who does the intro to that show, I called it the Unicus Radio Hour. That is Jerry Wills, and he claims that he was brought here as a toddler by these Nordic extraterrestrial beings interacting with our government covertly back in the 50s. He was brought here. I had published a story. It's out there. In fact, I met him on the set of NBC's show called The Other Side at NBC Studios in Burbank.
Yeah, The Other Side. I remember that.
Yeah, so we were on that show. I mean, my wife and I were on that show a couple of times, and that's how I met Jerry. And we're still friends. But bottom line is, he's the voice announcing giving the intro. And
I see.
So we had some fun. I've had fun doing this, but there's always a little bit more going on behind the scenes if you know how to read into it.
Oh, yes. There always is. But it seems like you had a great time doing it.
Yeah, I mean, when everything functioned properly, it was a bit maddening, but yeah, ultimately, I just felt like that, I'd done enough in that field, and that I needed to focus on something else. And because my son was still going to school at the time, he really needed me. He was in high school, and those are some tough years. So I kind of stopped doing that. But
where's your son now, Robert, if you don't mind me asking?
He's graduated. He lives with us, and he's producing. Yeah, he produces electronics dance music is what he's working on right now.
That's really popular.
I know. It's not my style, but he's really good at it.
It's not mine either. It sounds like two fax machines doing something naughty. You know what I mean?
Yes, there's a lot. It's very...
Yeah, I'm not with it. It's not my style. All this sort of music was actually already invented many, many moons ago. Uh-huh. And everything just comes full circle all the time. Oh yeah, it does. It's a format. It's just not my thing. It's not our cup of tea, in other words. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like an old guy now. Don't worry. You're not that old. Come on now, Robert. No. I'm okay. But I'm just saying it's weird, at generations, every generation goes, those young people. Get off my lawn. I know, right? Oh, by the way, one name that I forgot to mention who was always a bit of an influence for me was, of course, Vin Scully. Great voice. He, of course, was the voice I listened to that. I was a Dodgers fan. Yeah, right. I grew up with the... I could listen to that guy for hours, too. You'd have to. The games were really long. But anything he said was just interesting. It was ridiculous. Yeah, he was a really good storyteller. Because he was completely authentic. Very interesting guy, yeah. Yeah, I like that guy a lot. He's up there in age now. I think he's about 90. Is he still around, really? I think so. I think he's still alive. I didn't add him to my celebrity death pool, so I think he's still alive. Oh, George Putnam. That's the guy I'm trying to think of. He was a legend in Los Angeles for many years. Yes, he was, right. Daytime, and he actually was taking calls. Spoke to him a couple times. Ray Bream was much more interesting. He's a far more intellectual guy, not as political.
He did something called the word of the day, because he had a pretty advanced vocabulary compared to most people, because he liked to read a lot. So if you could figure out the word of the day. So I called in one day and I told him, I said, I've invented a new word.
You must have liked that.
I said, it's spoken fluently in Washington, D.C. It's called excremento. And at first there was this silence, like, what? Did you just curse on the air? He's like trying to think, should I bleep it?
You're going to hit the dump button on you there.
So I snuck that in on him. But
that's pretty good.
It was
really
fun.
Good. Yeah.
He's another guy that lived in Malibu.
But
and that's what I'm working on. Sorry if I interrupt, but I'm actually still doing this expose. It's really hard to write about. I kind of know how I ended up doing this, but sort of like what I did for Washington D.C., much like what I did for the hidden history of Washington D.C. That's what I'm working on for Malibu, and it's just too much. Is honestly the level of information I'm trying to I am having to sift through it, and
there's a lot, yeah.
It's look, what I said about the Skinwalker Ranch, everybody who's interested in this stuff knows Skinwalker Ranch is not someplace you'd want to hang out.
Right.
I mean, you certainly want to live there, let alone just even hang out for one night and encounter any of those creepy things that comes out of the portal there. Unfortunately, Malibu is the same way. I mean, there's a lot of portals like that around the world. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but most people, that's the last thing they think of. Because of the way the media portrays it, Hollywood, it's like it is an extension of Hollywood. I should say historically that's what it became over time. However, I really feel like those entities attracted people to Hollywood and then ultimately to Malibu to serve a purpose, which is to just mess with our minds.
Right. And of course you lived in Malibu for a very long time.
Yeah, I grew up there.
Right.
But I didn't understand it until fully. Because that's where I met Enki, and it had all kinds of weird experiences. Then I realized, wait a minute, it's not just me. There's a lot of other people, and this is not a good place to live. Considering how many suicides, I think I knew 8 people that killed themselves. Yeah. I mean, some of them were very much closer to me than others, but I mean, it's a small town, so yeah, I personally knew 8. I think it was like 8 people, which I thought was extraordinarily high.
Yeah, that is pretty high.
And especially when the one guy he hung himself and came to me while I was sleeping in an astral. He came to me and literally took me up to the mountains where he had hung himself. I didn't know this at the time in the dream. All I know is, the way it happened was I was with him in a dream up in the mountains, very close to where that thing with Enki happened. And, he and I were there, and there was other people looking at a distance, or a group of them standing off on a distance up on a cliff, and he and I were down in this area that I recognized. It was sort of a hangout. It was a place you could jump into a water hole.
Right.
Dive into. But it was also like, because it was one of the only water sources all year round, and there was caves there, that's where the last mountain lions lived. And as we were there, suddenly a mountain lion came out of one of these caves and grabbed me by the arm and drug me in, and I woke up in just a panic.
Oh, yeah.
And then later that morning, my mother called me and said, your friend's missing. I won't say his name. He's missing. And she said, his car was parked, and she told me exactly where in the mountains. I was like, oh, God.
Oh, no, yeah.
I thought he'd been attacked by a mountain lion while he was mountain biking in that area.
Right.
Well, so naturally I called the cops, and I called the emergency, it's part of the police department. I called the emergency search and rescue team, and I spoke to an officer, and I told him, I said, look, I know this guy. I grew up with him, and I said, I know where he went. I think I know where he went, because I had a weird dream last night, and I said, I think he was attacked by a mountain lion. And if that's the case, and it drug him into a cave, you're not going to be able to. You're not gonna see him from the air, even with the forward-looking infrared radar. There's not gonna be a heat signature. That's what I'm just telling him, and then like a day later or so, his wife called me and said, oh, we found him. Thank you for helping. And then the next thing I know,
that's
like about a few weeks, so I gotta finish the story, otherwise people are gonna wonder what I'm rambling about. So a few weeks later, I got a call from his wife again, and I didn't know her very well, but somehow she had my number. I think she got it from the police. Because every time you call the police or any agency, they record your everything. So she says, we're having a service at the church in Malibu Canyon, and we'd like you to come. And so I did. And I was still thinking that he'd been killed by a mountain lion. And when I walked in there, it was just really, weird, because I'm seeing people I haven't seen in years. Some of my neighbors in my peer group. Like I said, I'm not really close with the people I grew up with because I just went off on a tangent.
Right.
So I got up there and I spoke about him a bit and addressed the family there. And because they just said, anybody who wants to say something, go for it. And I was still not understanding what had happened. And then afterwards, one of my neighbors came up to me and we were talking, and he goes, and I said, yeah, it's too bad, a mountain lion. And he goes, what are you talking about, Robert? He hung himself. I'm like,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
And I swear to God, I thought I was going to pass out. I felt like something so oppressive come over me. And then, oh no, okay. I know why he told me. Because just prior to that, what had happened, the police officer came up to me and he says, hey, I'm so-and-so. I spoke to you on the phone about your friend, and I'm really sorry. We did everything we could to try and get to him. And I said, no, that's okay. I appreciate it. I totally understand. And then I said something about the mountain lions, and he looked at me really weird. And that's when a friend and one of my neighbors came over, and he started talking, and I go, hey, well, I said something, and they both were looking at me really weird. So I said to the officer, I said, so what happened? He goes, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. I'm not permitted to. Legally, they're not. They can't do that.
Right.
But he was looking really concerned, and I'm like, okay, now I'm really thinking, what the hell's going on here? So I turned to my friend and I said, what the F is going on, man? Tell me what happened. He goes, you don't know? And I said, yeah, I thought he was about a mountain lion. He's like, no, man, he hung himself. I'm like, holy God, what? It's because there you go again. And then so at the time, I really was thinking, I didn't know about the Archon agenda.
That's gruesome way to go.
Well, yeah, because of the impact it had on his family and friends, man. We were all devastated.
Yeah.
Which is what they want, naturally. So, but I could feel there was a presence there. Part of it I could feel was my friend, because like I said, now this was getting really personal. This guy came to me, his spirit came to me and was trying to tell me something. He needed help. Okay,
Sounds like it, man.
I can't tell you any more of this. But okay, I gotta finish this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody left, and I'm standing there looking up at this big projected picture of my friend's face, and he's smiling and he's looking all happy, just like I always remember. He had a unique personality.
Right.
And I was just having this feeling like, part of him was, obviously you don't do that unless you're really distressed. And, I think unresolved, and like ghosting the place, and, cause he hadn't been buried yet. And so anyway, I remember getting so angry. I didn't pass out. I'm looking at my friend, and I promised him, I said, whatever. At this point, like I said, I was already starting, I'd been doing quite a bit of research, but I didn't fully understand what was happening. I knew that he was pushed into that. That's what my gut feeling was telling me. He was probably possessed or being pushed, influenced.
Right.
On a paranormal level.
That's what I'm feeling.
And I couldn't walk out of there. I was just like riveted to the floor, and I just got so angry. I was like, whoever the F you guys are, if it's the last thing I do, you're not going to get away with this. I'll do whatever I can. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop you from doing this to these people. My friend didn't deserve this at all. And that was, I'm thinking this, I wasn't saying it because who would I talk to? The church, thank God the church was empty. At the moment, everybody was outside at this, whatever they do, that little reception thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I compose myself. I walk outside, and there's his sister. And, sorry.
No,
I'm having
all right.
a really hard time saying this.
Yeah, I know, Robert. It's okay. It's a very
Because I see her in my mind when I'm talking to you, and like I'm seeing her, it's happening. So she's looking at me, and so naturally I walk over, and I was gonna say hello, and she just lunged at me, and with a bear hug. And I mean, we were never really close. It wasn't that kind of affection. It was more like, man, it was really out of character. Because she was a few years older, and we were not in the same group. I was friends with her brother, not her.
Yes.
But I knew her. So, I mean, naturally, I'd say hello. Or I think I was trying to say, hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then she just grabbed me and was holding me so tight. It reminded me of my friend because he was really big in football. He had tackled me a few times. I mean, Jesus Christ, that guy, I've never been tackled by anybody that hard. He's a really strong guy. And the way she grabbed me, I was like, I felt like he was there.
Yeah, I understand. I know that feeling, actually.
I forget the exact time frame, but I'm guessing like a couple months later, that place was burned to the ground.
Oh, no.
By a wildfire. Oh, it's just an accident. Well, okay. No, I think it happened on purpose.
Probably did, yeah.
That place needed to be burned to the ground because that was really a very horrible thing. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay, I'm just trying to give people illustrate. This is the kind of crap that I deal with. And, if that was an isolated incident, I probably wouldn't even bring it up. But people have a right to know that this is the level of evil that exists in Malibu. The root of the word Malibu is mal. In the Romance languages, it literally means bad or evil. So what are the odds? What are the odds? I think it's, impossible. This is not a coincidence. This is an absolute manifestation of, in other words, it fits. It fits. It absolutely fits. And the local native people knew about these entities. They were well aware of them, and somehow they protected themselves, or they avoided certain areas, especially at night. They would avoid these areas because they knew that these entities would come up with what they called the lower world. We call it the underworld in the Western culture. And so, yeah, anyway, sorry I got off on that tangent.
No, it's okay. It's good that you relate that story. I think it needed to be heard.
Yeah, I wish it didn't happen.
Well, you had to get it out, Robert. It's okay.
And that was years after, saving that boy's life. So 85 September, this was, I'm thinking 2000 something when my buddy did that. Mm-hmm. And, see, by that time I already knew. I knew I didn't have all the answers, but man, if I thought I was going to walk away from it and just, hey, it's not my problem kind of thing.
Yeah.
It got really personal, very ugly. I can't, it's hard for me. You don't understand the level of pissed off I was at that point. It was beyond description. The feeling I was getting was just overwhelming. And it was like, I've never been so determined to do anything in my life because of that. I felt that was one of the most just horrific injustices that I personally was involved in. And, yeah.
You're a good guy, Robert, by the way.
Well, I try. I'm not perfect. I've made some really stupid mistakes.
We all have.
But, yeah. Okay. So, did you want to discuss the Las Vegas thing real quick?
Oh, yeah. Let's just go over that really quickly, even though we could definitely come back and do it, but.
Yeah. There's a couple missing pieces of the puzzle that haven't come out. I mean, they're finally admitting that they were looking at a second person of interest, not just his girlfriend, but some other guy.
Oh, yes.
And they're playing games with this. This guy hasn't granted any interviews. The police aren't saying why. The FBI isn't saying why. The real person of interest is that Saudi piece of crap, Alaweed.
That's another name, yes. He was there.
Just like 9/11. He was there, and I'll put all those pieces together in the final. Okay, so I did one article called "Satanic Sacrifice in Sin City."
Correct.
And man, there's a lot of graphic stuff there, and I laid it out. I mean, I think I made a very compelling case that this was truly another satanic sacrifice like 9/11, and that this guy Paddock was a patsy, and it was all planned out well in advance. So I ended up writing part 2. But I only got halfway through it because I realized I was missing some vital information, and that has everything to do with the Saudis, specifically the ones that were recently arrested and held hostage for a ransom for money. But yeah, Alawid was involved in that whole thing, but he didn't act alone. There was Saudi military, the Air Force was there training at Area 51 or Nellis or whatever you want to call it for weeks. And I'm sure Mossad was involved because they're hand in glove with the Saudis. And yeah, it was a very ugly, very disturbing chapter in our history that most people don't understand that level of warfare, because it really is the battle between light and dark.
Truly is. And I had said on the program when that incident just occurred that most Americans will move on after a week. And they did. Most people totally forgot about all of this, the biggest mass shooting we've had.
Yeah. Yep. It's already under the rug. People are on other things.
Yeah, it's terrible. And I believe the guy's name was Douglas Haig, a name that was just brought out.
I don't know who he is.
Yeah, he was selling the ammunition. He's an ammunition dealer.
Okay, well, yeah, but all right. The whatever they found in the room, that was only part of what was being used, because there was multiple shooters in multiple locations that night.
I agree with that.
According to all eyewitnesses and some of the video that was able to be released, because, most everybody's cell phone that was being shot at, they had their cell phones confiscated.
Speaking of video, we haven't even seen one video of Stephen doing any of this. We haven't seen any of him moving around in the hotel. We haven't seen him actually fire.
Oh, that's the other thing that came out, that he had requested a different, he didn't even ask for that room. They put him in that room at that particular spot so that it would fit to the narrative.
Such a strange event.
Oh, well, what isn't though? I mean, especially these high profile things, there's all kinds of,
so weird.
Well, this is what sophistry is all about. It's very sophisticated. The root being of that word is Sophia, allegedly the one who birthed the Archon demon parasite infection. According to that one particular small cache of scrolls we call the Nag Hammadi library, it isn't really a library. It was just, it's absurd. It was, the Library of Alexandria over time had housed tens of thousands of scrolls. A lot of it was considered to be Gnostic teaching. And most of it was, I think most of it was looted and then secreted away. But of course that library was burnt down on more than one occasion. So yeah, just like the books in China here. One day an emperor of the era said, burn the books.
So they did.
They're gone. As far as we know, for all intents and purposes, and this happened all over the world, just like the Mayan codexes. Gone. We have a couple. Does that mean we know what was in the rest of them? Hell no.
Right.
We have no clue.
Yeah.
What these people, and they were very intelligent. Yes, they were barbaric, uncivilized, bloodthirsty on some level, but they could measure the precessions of Venus down to the, nanosecond or something. It was ridiculous how accurate their observatories were. So anyway, one of these years, God, it would be nice to have access to some kind of factual information about our history.
Yeah, something solid for once.
Well, I know it's out there somewhere, but I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime.
The truth is out there.
Yeah, right. It's not on Fox X-Files. No, that is
right.
far, far, far from the truth. That's another guy. What is his name? The guy that plays Scully.
Duchovny.
To play Fox Mulder. What's his name?
Duchovny.
Yeah, he lives in Malibu, or off and on. That's one of his hangouts. And same with the producer, Chris Carter.
The bigwigs, right.
I don't know. He's just, like most, look, it would be easier to say the celebrities and high profile people that haven't lived or vacationed in Malibu. But I'll tell you this much, the majority of them have suffered for it. They don't equate the two the way I would or have in the research I'm doing, but it's pretty obvious. They all suffer from depression or what they call the inner demon or demons. They've all struggled against their inner demons. Quite a few of them have lost their lives or marriages or family members because of it.
That's what drives them to drug overdoses,
Yeah, Carol O'Connor's son. I believe he was adopted. In any case, and also Stallone. They both lived on the beach where I worked. Both of them, those men, lost their sons to allegedly to drug abuse or overdoses or something. And John Lennon, that Lost Weekend with that girl, I'm trying to think, her name was May Pang or something. That's where they were hanging out. So yeah, it's creepy. Like I said, I mean, by itself, it doesn't sound like much. I mean, it's tragic. Yeah, the guy lost his son. But when you start adding it up, as you know, correlating it the way I do, man, it's just shocking.
Yeah, sometimes that's the price you pay sometimes.
I mean, look, everybody knows Hollywood's just got issues with fidelity and drugs and
so many.
Right. But like I said, the fact that most all of them hang out in Malibu, and even the politicians like the Kennedys were hanging out there with Marilyn Monroe.
That's true.
And for all of them to have suffered in that manner violently. The other one was Sharon Tate.
Right.
She was the impetus allegedly for the Malibu Barbie, but she was also in a movie called Don't Make Waves, and that was where she played a character named Malibu, a bimbo named Malibu.
Yes.
And you know, she was obviously involved in a lot of dark occult stuff. So, like I said, I'm just giving you a very, very brief, just like an appetizer of what I found out. But really, I found it out the hard way, and now I'm starting to actually be able to make a presentation of it to others. The only reason I'm doing this, I'm not quite there yet, is because people really need to know that's not a good place to go. It's like, you know, if you don't want to catch Ebola, you shouldn't go to Africa or certain villages in Africa, right? You avoid them.
Right.
Okay, so the same thing, and obviously anybody who knows anything about paranormal, well, you don't go to Skinwalker Ranch to camp out.
Right.
Nobody in their right mind would go there. Same is true for Malibu. And people don't know, but they should.
Yeah, they don't. Right.
Cause like, if you don't know, you're going to go there thinking, oh, hey, this is where the rich and famous go. It's so beautiful. Which is true. But then there's the other thing, the undercurrent, the dark underbelly. The place is freaking dangerous.
It truly is. And Robert, I must bring you back on here again. We definitely are running out of time here.
Okay.
I do want to thank you tremendously for being a part of the program and sharing all that you have. And definitely a part 2 will be in the works soon.
Okay. Wonderful, Michael. I appreciate it.
All right, Robert. Go ahead and plug your website before you go.
Oh, yeah. Everything I do is available through my website. It's unicusmagazine.com. It's spelled UNICUS magazine.com. That's all one word. Most everything is free there. But that's where you can, if you'd like, you can get copies of my books. Some of our back issues of the magazine, of Unicus magazine. That was the first and only magazine for earthbound extraterrestrials, by the way. That's how I really became started as a public figure, journalist, whatever, in this field back in the early 90s. And here I am, still doing it. What is it? Oh, an archive of some of my radio. If you click on radio, there's some stuff. Also, I have a video channel on YouTube. I'm compiling a lot of stuff there if you want to. I don't know. Some of the people actually, it's really weird, Michael. People tell me I've listened to like a dozen of your interviews. I'm thinking, why would you do that? I'm talking about the same thing. Pretty much to me, it sounds like the same. Why would, you listen to one or two and that's it. But anyway, I guess they're hoping they're going to find something new. And honestly, when I do find something new, it will be posted on my website. I have upgraded as much as I can last year. We'll see what I can do, what the future holds. But, yeah, that's where all my work is archived.
Nice. Now, Robert, you definitely are one of my favorite guests here.
Thank you.
You definitely will have to return again. It seems like, this just goes by so fast whenever you're on.
Yeah, a couple hours just flies by. All right, yeah, and if something important really does pop, I will send it to you because you're on my short list of people that I keep in touch with in my media file.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
Hey, welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you thank me now. Wait till you see what comes in the
Don't worry. I think I'm ready for anything nowadays.
Okay. I hope so.
Yes, sir. All right, Robert. It was always an honor and pleasure to speak to you, and we'll do it again soon.
Okay, very good, Michael. Thank you.
All right. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
And that was Robert Stanley. My goodness, what an interview that was. He is definitely one of my favorite people on this planet. He truly is. I do want to thank all of you out there for listening to this. It's always fun when I get behind the mic and talk to these amazing people. I hope all of you really enjoyed this one. Also, I must remind you, if you have missed an episode, please go back to michaeldecon.com for anything you might have missed. Some pretty good interviews there. And I do want to say thank you to Mr. Robert Stanley for being a part of the program yet again. And if you're listening to this on a replay, keep in mind, you can listen every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the TuneIn Radio app. I'm Michael Decon. Thanks for listening. And with that said, the world is a mysterious place, and life itself is a mystery. Until next time, good night, everybody.
Sherry. Right in the hardest part out. I'm not that way. I'm a Christian.
Drop out of graduate school. Drop out of
You mentioned the Illuminati, and we won't go into who's behind them, but the Illuminati certainly is part of the whole thing. The top members of the Illuminati are open worshippers of Lucifer.
I could tell that all the mainstream media outlets were giving me like bullshit. Like you can just see it. It's clear.
How appropriate. I wish I could be in that ring with Hogan right now.
It's crazy.
I had no idea this shit existed before 726.
Oh, Grammy. I like Grammy. I'm gonna keep it real.
A lot of good content. A lot of cool topics. You know, I feel, fortunate to have an opportunity to speak to everything,
Yeah, Mr. Rusev. That shit, I like that, man.
It's the simplest shit. You go in there, you see the bartender, you say, hey, you can talk about midnight. That's what I want.
Just for what it's worth, I want to put in my 2 cents to tell you that those incredibly well-rounded shows.
Introducing the greatest tag team on the radio.
Guess what, motherfucker?
Successfully erased.
Gonna change the plans. We got a harvest today. I'm gonna need all hands on deck, boys.
Today?
Yeah, like right now.
I can't see it, man. I got a 2-hour corporate gig booked in the T-box. Plus, phones gotta get fixed. I got cards that need to be programmed. Shit's too tight. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Impossible?
I'll give you a half pound of weed.
Done. Rock pile. Let's roll. Mr. Green, hold shit down here, man. Hold it down.
What happened to impossible?
Shit, a half a pound of weed to move mountains. You know what it is?
All right, see you down at the rink, man.